Hello everybody, I'm standing here in the courtyard of the great North American College in Rome. That's where I'm staying now, and I've stayed here for 2 long sojourns over the past several years, so it's a place it's very close to my heart. Well, it's the day after the big day, and let me tell you what it was like to get through the Canonization Day yesterday. I had to leave very early. I was doing commentary for NBC News, but they were on the far side of the piazza, the north side, at the Piazza del Risorgimento. Well, normally it would take about 15 minutes to get from here to there, but there were about 500,000 people between here and there. So I left very early. I had to go all the way down to the Tiber, cross it, and then go north and then work my way back over. So it took me about an hour to get there on foot. But it was kind of fun because in the process you saw this whole army of people descending on St. Peter's. And you saw flags, and there were parades and songs and all the different languages. So it was kind of a great experience. I got to the spot at the Risorgimento. We went up to the roof, and it was quite cool. It was a little rain in the air, and it was quite cool. But George Weigel and I were the 2 commentators for NBC. And I must say, NBC was great. They played the whole Mass, of course. Lester Holt was the anchor back in New York. And they allowed us to comment all during the Mass. So he would ask questions periodically about what's going on, where we are in the Mass, but also gave us a chance to ruminate a bit about the importance of these 2 saints. So it really was a privilege to do that. After the Mass was over, just seeing the crowds, again, emptying out in the other direction was actually very moving, very beautiful. In fact, during the Mass, I remember when the canonization was formally announced, though we were a long way away, you could hear this great roar go up from the crowd. And it was as though the whole Catholic world was just approving of what had happened. So very beautiful experience. But just after the Mass, I went over to George Weigel's apartment. It's not that he owns one here, but someone loans him an apartment when he's here in Rome. And there he made a little omelet for us. And but at the very end of lunch, in came a Polish family he knows. And the paterfamilias of this family is a man about 75. And George introduced him to me as, here's Karol Wojtyła's altar server. When Wojtyła was a young priest, about 29, in Kraków, in this parish of St. Florian's, he gathered to him a lot of young people, including this kid at the time, 10 years old, who was his server. This gentleman, who's now, he's a retired physicist at a very high level, but he was part of that group that would go off with Wojtyła on kayaking trips and hiking trips up the mountains. So I just had a ball asking him questions about Karol Wojtyła, and he confirmed all these stories that you hear about how gregarious he was, how good he was with these kids, how we'd go hiking and kayaking with them. He talked a lot about the masses Wojtyła would celebrate. He would take a kayak and they'd turn it over, and that became the altar. He always carried with him, he said, a altar stone, with the relics of a martyr. So he'd have a real mass there. And he said it was very unusual at the time, very unusual for a Polish priest to be celebrating Mass outdoors. The cross were 2 oars lashed together. He said he loved to sing. That's a memory he has, that Wojtyła would love to sing folk songs long into the night with these young people. So it was very moving to be with this man who had known Saint John Paul II. At the very end, I asked him, I said, who's Wojtyła's successor now in Poland? Is there a priest like Wojtyła that's gathering the young? And to be honest with you, he said, no, there really isn't a successor. And in some ways you get it. Who's going to rival someone like Karol Wojtyła? But at the same time, I thought it's kind of sad. There needs to be somebody who can pick up that banner. A little bit later in the day, I did some commentary for EWTN. They were in a location just above the St. Peter's Square, and gave me a chance to kind of summarize my feelings about these 2 popes and what they mean, things I've shared with you the last couple of days. And then after that, I had Mass back here at the North American, and George Weigel was there, and Raymond de Souza, who's a great Canadian priest, said the Mass. Well, then right afterwards, George said to me, let's go check on Tim and see if he's here. I thought, Tim, who's Tim? Well, he meant Timothy Cardinal Dolan, the Archbishop of New York, who indeed is here. So we knocked on his door, and the door swung open, and there in all his glory was Cardinal Dolan. And he invited us in, and we had a gregarious time with him, reminiscing about the day. Then my day ended with a dinner with Father Paul Murray, who's a great friend of mine. I've talked about him before, I think, professor of spiritual theology over at the Angelicum. We had a great meal, and as his custom, he brought a book, and this time one of my favorites, Dante's Divine Comedy, and he read sections from it. Paul has this beautiful kind of musical voice, and it was a delight to listen to him. And that Roman dinner ended about, I don't know, 10:30, 10:45. I made my way back here to the North American. So it was a very memorable day, beautiful day, fascinating day. I'm a little glad today to have some time off, a little downtime. But it's been a wonderful experience just to take in the beauty, glory, romance of Catholicism. So thanks for following these videos. I hope to do maybe another one before I go. And keep praying for me, please. And God bless you, everybody.